What's good out there, Liquid Trucking, and welcome into the Liquid Trucking Podcast. I'm your host, Marcus. Thanks so much for being here today. Got a great episode in line for you. Really looking forward to this one because it's something that is very synonymous with trucking, but we haven't talked about it for a little while, and I'm always excited to have the conversations that we're going to have coming up with a couple of drivers, and I'll get to that in a moment. First things first, always remember we've got a fantastic podcast website for you to go check out, and it's very simple to navigate to. Just head on over to liquidtrucking.com. There's a banner at the top of the page, got a picture of me. I got my Liquid Trucking podcast hat on and a beard. I stand out, okay? That's all I'm trying to say. Click that. It takes you right to our one-stop shop for every single thing podcast, and that includes my email address there. If you would like to send an email about what you would like to hear on the podcast, or if you would like to come on to discuss something that you have in mind, that's all great. Again, you can email us, podcast@liquidtrucking.com, or just navigate over to the website there, and you can get a hold of me there as well. And as always, I encourage you drivers, many of you do, but there's always more of you out there that could. If you've got my phone number, if you've ever been on this show before, you've got it. Feel free to send me a text or give me a call. I will always answer. And in the case that I can't, leave me a voicemail. I'll get back to you as soon as possible. You guys are the ones that provide the content for this show. I'm just the one driving the bus, all right? If nobody fills it up with Def and Diesel, I don't go anywhere. So remember, we're always looking for your ideas. And if you suggest an entire episode topic to us, I might even be able to get you 50,000 Drive for Gold points. So keep those suggestions coming, okay? As far as what we're talking about today, I really like this topic because I feel like there are a lot of takes on it, whether it be good, bad, or ugly. And that is the best and worst truck stops in America. I've got a couple of lists here done by different outlets, whether they be insurance outlets or they handle trucking news or just, general trucking information. The reason I want to pull up different ones to go over, and which, by the way, we'll go over these a little bit later on in the program. I like to pull up different ones because the insurance compiled lists always give me pause. And it's not that, listen, I understand that what would be bad for an insurance company would be bad for a trucking company and the driver. I get it. I just sometimes think that insurance companies are more worried about their bottom line than they're actually worried about the driver that tows around their bottom line. So I will read some of the selections from the insurance company's list just because it makes sense. Obviously, we're talking high-value loads here, and while liquid tanker drivers typically probably don't deal with a lot of people trying to steal their load because, well, it would take another tanker truck or a lot of 50-gallon barrels. I think that the safety aspect of some of these truck stops that we talk about, it should be more focused on personal safety rather than the safety of the load, especially for this fleet, for this podcast. If you guys got somebody that's trying to siphon off a load late at night, hey, more power to them. I have a feeling they're going to meet somebody that was sleeping in that berth that might have a tire thumper or something similar on them to greet them. But that notwithstanding, I want to talk about also the best truck stops in America because there's a lot of them, okay? There's a lot of really nice ones out there. The one that comes to the top of everybody's list is going to be Iowa 80, so I'm just going to say that right now. That's kind of a historic truck stop, right? I mean, it's right smack in the center of the country for the most part. I-80 drives right by it, which means pretty much all of you are going to pass it at some point in time. And it's really well appointed. I mean, they got a barbershop, they got theaters, they got all sorts of good stuff in there. I want to talk about some of those too. I don't only want this episode to be riddled with where you guys shouldn't go. One of my favorite episodes that we did last year was when we had Matthew Langford and Matt McKellar on, and they were sharing all of their great spots to go take a 34. This is a lot like that episode, okay? I don't necessarily only want to know the places you avoid. I would really like to hear the places that you frequent and why you frequent them. Now, I've got a few here that I want to read off real quick. That I wrote down because I had a couple of drivers give me suggestions, but they just didn't want to come on the show, which is totally fine. When I text you guys, feel free to text me back with just suggestions. You don't have to come on the show. to interact with the show or to, feed content to the show. We love your experiences. We love hearing about what you deal with out there on the road here. So if you send me a response, I'm probably going to read it, and I've got a couple right here. We're going to start this conversation here real shortly, by the way. I've got Polar Bear, our good buddy, and Nathan Dobrenz, another frequent guest on this podcast, coming on to talk about their favorite and least favorite truck stops here just around the corner. But first, I want to get to one from driver Michael Harris. And this one I had to bring up because if you guys don't know about this, you got to get there. Unfortunately, it's in Columbia, South Carolina, which, not to say that a truck stop can't be nice in Columbia, South Carolina. I just know that Columbia, South Carolina is kind of a vacation destination. There might be plenty for you to do in Columbia, South Carolina outside of the truck stop. Hey, they've got some great golf over there. If any of you guys are a golfer that tows around your sticks, and you're in Columbia, South Carolina, you should probably go check out some golf and check out the Petro in Columbia, South Carolina. What Michael Harris told me about it is they've got decent food. They really do. And remember the generation that I'm coming from when I tell you this, okay? I'm 40 years old. I grew up with video games all around me. They have an arcade at this Petro in Columbia, South Carolina, and not what it sounds like a few games and like a claw machine, an arcade. Don't call your bullshit with 3 games and a claw machine tucked away in a cove somewhere your arcade. When I hear the word arcade, I want to go into a room and be totally surrounded by video games. I don't care. Pinball, you can put the claw machines in there. It doesn't matter. But an arcade is a place where I am surrounded in my own room. Not my own room, but in a room where it's the games room, okay? And that's what it sounds like we're talking about here in Columbia, South Carolina. That's not even the high point, though. The high point for this particular Petro in Columbia, South Carolina, it's got a damn bowling alley. Is there anything better to do than pass the time with a concession stand hot dog, some crinkle cut fries, and just grease on your fingers in 3 holes of a bowling ball? I'll tell you right now, if I was a driver, I would definitely be heading by Columbia, South Carolina every time I got the chance, because you want to talk 34-hour reset, man. I'm going to spend 12 of it in the arcade. I'm going to spend 6 of it in the bowling alley, and I'm going to spend 18, 17, 16, whatever's left, probably sleeping and licking my wounds after all the money I spent in said arcade. This one sounds awesome. Again, thank you, Michael Harris, Liquid Driver, for bringing up Petro in Columbia, South Carolina. Okay, I want to bring in Polar Bear and Nathan Dobrenz right now so we can hear what they have to say about where some of the best and worst truck stops in America are.
Welcome to the gold standard of podcasts for the gold standard of drivers. This is the Liquid Trucking Podcast with your host, Marcus Bridges.
Got a couple drivers in here to talk about their favorite and least favorite, maybe dirtiest, maybe cleanest. I don't know. It's a wide open conversation with these drivers about truck stops, and we're going to cover all the bases. Joining me today, we've got Nathan Dobrenz, Liquid Driver, to welcome back to the show. Nathan, glad to have you here. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. And we've also got here joining us another regular of ours. We got Polar Bear in the house. Polar Bear, how's it going, man?
I'm doing good, bud. Yeah, always glad to be on here.
Well, no hard feelings between us after the roast. Of course, everybody, as we're recording this the day after it launched, so I thought it went really good. Nathan, I don't know if you heard it. Did you hear the Teenage Hotline roast me on the podcast?
Not yet.
Okay.
Yeah,
well,
it played today. So
you'll have to check it out and see what you think. And who knows, maybe after you hear it, you'll be rubbing your fingers together, wanting to get on the next one, so you can roast me too. All right. Well, fellas, I wanted to talk to you about what you had to say about the truck stops. Nathan, you actually had told me that you have a favorite one out in California. Now, I got to be honest with you. Probably one of the best places to have one of the best truck stops, because most of the drivers I talk to are pulling their hair out when they're in California. So you better have a comfy place to stop.
I grew up in California. I was born and raised there before I escaped and got to the Midwest. But this one, I don't know how many people are familiar with California. We have I-5 obviously runs up from SoCal to NorCal to Sac. I was born in San Jose, which is near San Francisco, which I know a lot of drivers hate that area. Driving a truck there is not fun either.
Yeah, the Bay Area, I hear, is just a mess when it comes to truck driving.
Well, there's no places to park in the Bay Area. They put ordinances in. They don't want no trucks parking there at all. Heck, even when I went on my home time, moving my truck in the street, there was a parking patrol already coming there ready to write a ticket, which I got a few tickets. They wouldn't ticket me parking in the driveway, but if I parked in the street, they would give me a $100 ticket.
Wow. Well, thank God they set up a nice truck stop for you guys to go park at once in a while. Tell us about this one that you like to frequent.
Well, the one I used to frequent when I was started over the road, because the company I went over the road with was based out of Wisconsin, and they would send me over to California. This was the closest one. It's Casa de Fruta, which is outside Hollister, California, near Gilroy. It's off the 156, 152. It basically connects 101 and I-5.
Okay.
For those drivers that frequent I-5, there's a Petro on 156. If you were to go past the Petro, about 40 miles, you'd run into it on the left. It's an old family farm. It's more of a tourist destination, but this truck, they have I think it's a Shell fuel stop there, DEF and all that. I liked it. They had a great diner. Didn't have showers, but had bathrooms. And the owner there actually hooked me up. So in San Jose, the park of dry van for store was $200 a day.
Whoa.
That was what I got quoted to store a trailer if I wanted to store a trailer close. But he let me park my dry van a week at a time, every time on my home time, for $200 a week on the farm.
Wow. That's amazing. So really what you've got here is like a mom and pop shop run type thing where, yeah, they've got their prices and stuff, but you're a frequent customer, so they're going to take care of you.
Yeah, I just asked him, like, hey, is there a place I could drop my trailer? He's like, we can't park it here, but we got a farm right down the road. $200 cash here. You want to park it here? No problem. Here's the gate code to get in if you're rolling early in the morning.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, good for that guy for being so good at customer service. I hope that, I hope that there's some drivers listening to this that are going to stop there just on principle to patronize that guy's establishment because he sounds like a great human.
Yeah.
What
He's
else?
actually the third generation owner of that.
Oh, that's
His
cool.
family owned, so.
That's cool.
Yeah.
He's doing the Lord's work out there, man. I'm glad to hear it. What other type of stuff did they offer there? You said I think that they had really good food there or a good little diner.
Yeah, they had a bakery. They did a bunch of fruit pies, all homemade there because they grow their own fruit.
Wow.
Burgers, bakery, all that right there. It's it's not 24 hours, but if you get there in business hours, it's definitely worth a stop.
It sounds like it kind of has that Midwest diner feel, too, because that was something I noticed out in the Midwest is that everybody had pie. Like, you can't find pie unless you go to a Sherry's around here, and they just closed all of those down in our state. So this sounds like a great little stop, man. Nothing better than a slice of pie after a long day, especially with homegrown fruit, you know?
Mm-hmm.
That sounds great. Okay, so once again, Casa de Fruta in Hollister, California, and it is between I-5 and 101. Remind me of the highway, 156?
156.
156.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, drivers, go check that one out, man. Everybody knows you need a little reprieve when you're out driving in the red tape state of California, so that sounds like a good place to stop. And, I mean, listen, you might agree with this because of where you were born, Nathan, but in terms of scenery, I don't know that there's much better than 101 from the southern tip of California to the northern tip of wherever it goes, Washington, right? I mean, that's a beautiful highway, treacherous at times, but beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, one thing, not trying to get political at all, but let's say my piece on that is like it's a beautiful state. I just wish it was ran better.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of people that echo that sentiment, Nathan, and we won't have to get into politics because I think we all agree on it, so we can just put a pin in that and move on. Polar Bear, you've got some stuff to talk about here. You texted me and said, I want to talk truck stops. We didn't really go back and forth much on it, so I don't have much from you. What truck stops are you remembering fondly? What are some of your favorite ones?
So a lot of mine go way back when, we used to go in and eat and talk to the neighbor next to you. But one of them was Brooklyn, Iowa, the Quick Star. Yeah, Quick Star, I think it is. had a German cook in it, so it was German buffet, and they had off the menu too. But he had a lot of the same stuff, but he would break it up with like side dishes, I guess you'd say. And then when he wasn't busy cooking, he was out talking to you. Back then you could take your thermos in, get your multiple cups of coffee in your thermos instead of drinking it there. He'd see it and grab it and go at least put hot water in it. Tell the waitress, hey, make sure you fill that. Just down home, really good guy. And then kind of rebuild it. They put a Denny's in it. And
oh, God.
Isn't that where the TA is now, or is that across?
No, that's the 197. This is the 201. Okay. You go to the 201 and go south. It's the Quick Star, and north is that little pilot. But yeah. I remember when that 197, and that was a TA. I remember he built that. Gosh, I'm going to say in 05, 06, probably 07, right in there, and then it stayed dormant for 8-10 years. Completely rebuilt it. Never opened back up until TA bought it 3 or 4 years ago.
Wow.
Something like that.
I love it when you guys talk about how a truck stop is kind of like you're basically eating at somebody's house, which is what you just described there, Polar Bear. I mean, he's just hanging out and taking care of people because that's what he's good at. And I got to be honest with you, I'm so damn hungry right now. I haven't eaten anything today. I knew that this was going to be a bad segment for me to go into first thing, but hey, I'm loving it so far. So let's take the food angle there, and let's look at this from a food perspective. Nathan, I'll start with you here. If there's one truck stop across the country that you've been to that you could recommend for the food alone, and let's take the first one that you mentioned in Hollister there, Casa de Forta, out of it, because we already know they've got good food, but what would be one place where you would tell your fellow liquid drivers, listen, if you're in the neighborhood, you got to stop in and get a plate?
I-94, Clearwater, Minnesota, coming out of Minneapolis, St. Paul. There's the Petro there that has a bakery. I think Nelson Brothers. They have Canadian prime rib that fill the whole plate. Oh my God!
So I've actually never heard of Canadian prime rib before. Is that just a bigger cut of prime rib? I mean,
it's huge.
That's awesome. Okay, so that was in Minnesota, you said?
Yeah, Clearwater, Minnesota. I don't remember the exit number, but I-94, right, like 40, 50 miles west.
It's west. Yeah. West of the cities. I know exactly where you mean.
So, Polar Bear, you've been there before and had yourself a Canadian-sized ribeye, it sounds like, no?
I've heard a bunch about it, but I've never been in it. That's all I've heard about the bakery. They've got, I guess, cinnamon rolls that fill the whole plate too, and pastries, and that's what they specialize in. Sounds
the donut the size of your head.
Oh my God, I love it! I
didn't want to say that, but
that's okay, man. We could talk about donuts the size of my head all day. I'm a huge sucker for a donut or a cinnamon roll. I was actually just back in Northeast Oregon for Christmas, and we went to this little Greasy Spoon diner in my little tiny hometown, and somebody asked, hey, what should I get? And the lady said, well, the cinnamon rolls just came out of the oven. And I noticed all these heads snap around in the cafe itself, and I was like, oh, the cinnamon rolls must be really good. My wife ordered one. It took her like 3 sittings to get through that damn thing. But it was phenomenal, man. And those of you out there, if you're listening to this podcast, if you make pastries the size of people's heads and slather them in butter and frosting, you are an American treasure. Thank you so much for what you do every single day. Okay, so Nathan, the what'd you say? The prime rib, the pastries in Clearwater, Minnesota. That's the one place you're going to recommend. Polar Bear, you haven't eaten there yet. You know where it's at, so you got another stop to make on your list. But how about for you?
I definitely want to go there. So this one here, back when I used to drink, it's a bar and grill. It's a Gothenburg, Nebraska, exit 211, and every Friday, Saturday night, they've got men's, women's, and big whatever it was. But so, go big or go home. So I got the big one. And I wasn't even halfway through it. And she's like, you going to want to go? And I said, do I look like I want to go? And I'm 3/4 of the way done with it. And she goes, you're not going to, are you? I said, I told you, I'll finish this. No more than got cook come out. And he's like, where's that guy that ate that? And I said, he goes, you did eat the whole thing. I said, I take it as a personal challenge. Now what do I get? Can I at least get a free beer? No.
No, of course not. No, you just get a stomach ache for the effort, right?
And it was so good. Mom was a cook her whole life, and the waitress helps with everything. But I tipped him $10 for that rib. It was that. I mean, you didn't need a knife. Just cut it with a fork.
Wow.
It was that tender, that good. I think that was like an $80 night with the meal, with the drinking.
Oh,
it
I'm
was
sure.
a Friday night. I remember that.
I'm sure. So tell me once again where that's at in Nebraska. Yep,
Gothenburg.
Gothenburg. Okay, perfect. I got you. We heard it that time. Okay, so stop by there and get the man-sized prime rib is what you're saying.
Yep. There's 3 different ones. It's like men's, women's, and oh my gosh, we'll put it that way, you know?
Yeah, I got
like that.
I got you.
It was probably, I bet it was 2 to 2.5 inches thick.
Wow.
Ooh.
And so I got to ask you guys, since we're talking prime rib here, are you guys horseradish guys? Because I'm a big, like, wipe it on there thick. Okay, good.
Yes.
I love it. I love it. My family looked at me on Christmas dinner, and they do this every year. They always sit there and watch to see exactly how much horseradish I'm going to put on top of that thing. And then it's like a game for them to watch when it gets up in my nostrils and I have to kind of shake my head a little bit, you know?
Yeah.
I just don't understand how people eat it any other way, Nathan.
There's also a third runner-up for a truck stop. I don't know how many listeners are a fan of Indian food.
Hey, I mean, once in a while, man, and then I get my plumbing fixed and I can go back after it a second time.
Yeah. Big Apple truck stop, Joplin, Missouri.
Oh, yes.
That is.
They have a
sorry, go ahead.
chicken tandoori, tikka marsala, garlic naan. Man, you'll regret it the next day, but it's good while you eat it.
Yeah, I bet the cab of the truck doesn't smell all that great, but man, it's good going down.
No comment.
Well, you know,
glad you're a solo driver.
Right.
Yeah. Yup.
You know, I hear about Big Apple in Joplin, Missouri all the time. It's a very well-respected truck stop, and it's got an Indian food restaurant. That's pretty cool. It's not something you see every day, but Polar Bear, have you been to the Big Apple?
It's only a couple years old, 3 years old probably.
Yeah.
Really? So really nice and new and updated, I would assume. Really nice facilities, lots of parking.
Isn't that the guy that owns Iowa 80 own that one too? Or he owns Joplin 44.
Yeah. Yep.
He owns Joplin 44.
All 3 of them. They're all owned. Yeah. 80, 44, Iowa 80, and
Big Apple. All those are owned by the same guys.
And Oak Grove and Joplin.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So tell me this. Let me answer this question, because obviously I'm not a truck driver. I know about Iowa 80. Kind of sits right there in the middle, right on I-80. Tons of traffic going by it. What's up with Joplin, Missouri? Because it seems like they have a couple of really highly regarded truck stops right there in Joplin. And I'm wondering, is this a thoroughfare? Does this kind of take one of the main arteries and go through, or do you have to get off the beaten path?
I know it's on main artery because 44 runs from, speaking of which, Garmin exit. Damn it. 44 runs from St. Louis down to OKC, and 49 runs from KC down towards, the split off the Little Rock Fort Smith. So it's a pretty major artery for the area. Okay,
very cool. Well, I've never been. I've been through Missouri. I got to see the Missouri River Valley from like the dead middle of it, which was pretty cool. But I see videos about the Iowa 80 truck stop, and I saw one about Joplin 44 as well. Those look like places I would want to stop if I was just out on a cruise or a road trip or something like that.
Yeah.
Is it?
It is.
Is it hard for you guys to not stop when you go by a place like that you know you really like, but it's not necessarily going to work with your route that day?
It depends. It depends how much time I have on the load.
Yeah. If you got some extra load, or if you got some extra time there, you might swing in, just check it out.
And back in the day, I stopped there.
Nathan, I'll turn to you here now, because I kind of want to hit the second half of this conversation, which is we've talked about a lot of good ones out there. We've really heaped some praise on some nice truck stops with great facilities. My question is, what are the ones that you stay away from? What comes to mind first when you're driving and you're just like, absolutely not, it's not an option, I'm going to the next one? Are there any like that out there for you?
Yeah, well, there's a few. Let's see here. The one that it's not open anymore, but the TA in Nashville. Oh my God,
that was bad.
It was bad. I mean, drivers would dump their rejected loads in the back. There was a guy that dropped a whole pallet of meat in the grass.
Oh my God, that's terrifying.
Yeah, there was about 100 flies flying around it. That was, yeah.
And
another
just
one.
By curiosity, real quick, was that the one on I-24 exit 48?
I believe it was the one dead center in Nashville. They tore it down and put parking there for the stadium, I think, last year.
Oh, okay. So they tore it down to put in parking. A bad truck stop replaced with parking is a good thing, but it wasn't truck parking, which is a bad thing. So,
yeah.
Okay, so maybe we just let that one go off into the ether. TA Nashville, it's not closed anymore. What was another one? Or not open anymore?
It's open. I mean, it's not bad. I try to avoid it just because parking is just anything in Gary, Indiana. The Loves and the Petro there. The parking lots are a disaster. Busy all the time. And it's just like I'd rather, in the Chicago area, I'd rather try to get through it or park just on the outskirts of it and never in it.
Sure. No, I get that. Now, you guys don't deal nearly as much with like load theft, I would assume, as what a dry van would, or even a reefer or anything like that. Has that ever been a problem that you guys have heard of for tanker drivers? Nathan, I'll start with you, and then we'll go back to Polar Bear and see how his service is doing. But I always hear about, like, a lot of these, I have a list here of all these truck stops that you're supposed to avoid. And, of course, it was made by an insurance company, so I have to think that a lot of this is about load theft. They're not as concerned about the driver's well-being. Do you guys ever have to deal with that?
Not with tank. I mean, definitely flatbed. I had to deal with it with carrying copper cathodes because, going across I-10 with copper, raw copper, like $250,000 worth of freaking copper. They just keep rolling.
Right. Because that's a guy that's living on the side of the roads. That's his lottery winning right there. If he can get his hands on it, he's set for life, right?
Yeah. Tanks, I mean, I would say here we haul high value stuff. I mean, I don't know what the street price of our chemicals are, but when you haul the honey, the whiskey, or whatnot, if they knew what was in it, they'd probably try to take it. But I don't know. It's not really easy to steal from the bulk.
Yeah, right. You don't know what's in there. How about you, Polar Bear? We'll test that service now. You've never really dealt with any like load theft at any of these places, have you?
No, I'm showing a full signal, so. Hopefully you can hear me okay.
Yep. You're sounding good, man. Bright and loud and clear.
Yeah.
So no load theft. That's a really good thing. It would take somebody that was really knowledgeable, like you said, Nathan. They would have to know what the load is, and B, they would have to know how to get it out of there and have something to put it in.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it makes sense. So, okay, let's look at this then from kind of a personal safety standpoint. You already said, Nathan, anywhere in Gary, Indiana is off the list, and that's fine because I hear some terrible things about Gary. I feel bad for the people of Gary. I'm sure there's nice people there, but it sounds like they need some cleaning up going on around there. Polar Bear, as far as personal safety is concerned, are there any places that you're avoiding hands down just because you don't like the vibe and you don't want to get billy clubbed in between your truck and trailer or something like that?
Any of the big ones, really. The Nashville one, I was only in it once, and then they built two Loves down there, Denton, Texas, just north of the split. They used to, 5 miles north, that little dinky one, didn't have much, but it had like 3 or 4 fuel islands. Really had to wait, and then they tore it completely down. Really, anything 3 miles any direction of a big city, really, because it's 50 miles outside of the city. It's 50 miles before you get in. If you get there, you got to get 3 o'clock in the afternoon to get a spot, and there's no guarantee of that.
Sure.
The bigger ones, like that Loves there in Gary. I used to back in the day go to Rhode Island every week, and I would go to exit 15. I used to go up that TA up there. It really didn't fill up, which was amazing. But
yeah,
on the one at the 80, 90, where it splits off to the Skyway and stuff.
Yeah.
Near Hard Rock. Yes, near the Hard Rock, I think.
Yeah, it is. So 15A goes south. There's a little dinky pilot there, and then 15B, you go under that big Flying J. Somebody listening to this and
they'll know,
me, but I won't hear it.
They'll know. But so it's kind of funny. So there's a few different things that I'm seeing here is that not only just by listening to you guys talk, but when I look at this list of places, it would seem to me that, like what you're saying, like I drop down Texas, and it's Flying J Houston loves Dallas, TA Dallas loves Houston, loves Dallas, Flying J Dallas. It's all these giant metropolitan areas that they're telling you to stay out of. If I drop down Georgia, almost every one of them's from Atlanta. If I drop down California, a lot of big cities kind of surrounding the LA area. So that seems like your guys' kind of go-to advice for each other is just stay out of metro areas, and hopefully you'll get away from kind of that personal crime type stuff. Is that what you're saying there, Nathan?
Yeah, I mean, my experience, I've only been driving 3 years. Like, the worst I've had was obviously the lot of lizards coming up your truck at the fuel island at 3 in the morning.
Oh, wow.
I'm over there. I sit there, flash my wedding ring, and she's like, "It don't matter on my own shit."
It's like, it might not matter to you, miss, but it does matter to another woman that's pretty important in my life. So,
and even recently here, I say I was outside Cincinnati at Flying Hook up there, and they were trying the whole scam. Hey, this driver just won the lottery. Come over here. He'll give you pull you off $100. They'll go there. There's 3 guys there. One guy with a stack of hundreds. And I'm like, I've seen this before. No thanks.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds like a real bad version of 3-card Monty that you just walked up on, and it only ends with you getting punched in the face, right?
Yeah.
Well, this is great, fellas. I really appreciate all the info here, because I do, my dad, being in the timber industry like he was and managing mills, we used to always have a CB in the truck on road trips. We would constantly be stopping at truck stops rather than just, your local mini mart or Chevron or whatever. And so I love to talk to you guys about some of these places, because if I ever get by them, I'm certainly going to stop. I know that now, Nathan, you might have driven around in Oregon quite a bit. Polar Bear, I know that you haven't made it out here a whole lot, but I would like to add, and I talk about this a little bit elsewhere in the podcast, but there's only 2 on the list from Oregon, and they're literally right next door to each other. It's the TA in Troutdale and the Loves in Troutdale on Interstate 84, exit 17. I don't know if you guys have ever been there. Lots of parking. There's a Popeye's Chicken at the TA, which I think is cool. But aside from that, it's not a really good place. Have you guys been there by chance, Nathan?
I've been to the Loves.
Oh, okay,
yeah,
cool.
that is so. There's just nothing there, and that's one of them. You got to be there so early. And you got to know exactly how to get in there, or you're doing the whoop-de-doo around to come back, because it's one way each way. You got to be going,
and it's one way.
You got to be going east to get into it.
Right, and and what Polar Bear's saying there, it doesn't quite give it full justice, because you got to think about it as you've got Interstate 84. You're one way on one side of that highway. You got to go either underneath of it or back up on it to get back to the exit to get to the other side. Like, it is a ridiculous loop-de-loop that he's talking about, and they don't make it easy. But the one thing that's kind of cool, there's an outlet mall there at the end of the road, so you get yourself a pair of cheap jeans or something like that, or a clock with 4 hands on it,
Before we're done, I just wanted to say there's one of my favorite, and this is the only reason I went there. I used to go to Wisconsin, unload, come down to South Beloit, Illinois, come down in Chicago, load, and still get out that night legally, of course, But
right.
So, anyways, I'd go into that Flying J, and I just met this waitress. Wasn't bad on the eyes, but just had a really good demeanor. So I would walk in, she'd see me, go over here. This old trucker come in just mad at the world, and he was kind of boisterous. You could hear him. He goes, "I want coffee, no water." So she brings him a cup of coffee with coffee beans in the bottom. And he looks at her and says, "What is this?" And she's like, "Well, that's coffee with no water." And he's like, "You know what I meant, And he's getting loud. Say maybe 45 minutes, close to an hour. She had him smiling. I wouldn't say he was in a great mood, but he wasn't yelling anymore. He was talking to her every little bit. I don't think she talked to him a lot, but it was just her attitude. And that's, and the nice part is she knew me, I knew her. I would walk in there, "Where's your area?" Instead of going up, she'd look at me and say, "Go sit there." She always knew what I got. I got the buffet there. Like I said, it was just easy back in the day. So that's one of my favorite stories, favorite of all.
That's really cool, man. It's amazing the difference that a person with a good attitude can make in your day. And that story definitely represents that. Nathan, go ahead.
I have an honorable mention for a good truck stop. The Albert Lee Petro, I-90, I-35.
There you go. Yep.
Excellent restaurant. They also have McDonald's in there if you just want something quick and fast. I think there's also a Pizza Hut or a Taco Bell.
Yeah, Sobreros, I think.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, I like this. And where was that one at?
I-35, I-90, Albert Lee Petro.
Albert Lee, Minnesota, yeah.
Albert Lee, Minnesota. Okay, I like it, man. Well,
Minnesota seems like has their good food. I mean, even outside the cross on 90, there's a Quick Star on top of the hill that has a little trucker diner in that as well.
Dude, it's cold up there. They got to, I mean, that's what it is. It's hot food is the only way they can survive that tundra up there, you know? It's wild in the winter, but this has been so cool to hear about all these guys, and I thank you for the time. We've gone about a half an hour here, so I'm going to get off here and let you get back to doing what you're doing. But, of course, before we let you go, always going to clear the air here and give you guys a chance to say anything that you want to. If there's any other truck stops that you want to mention, good, bad, or indifferent, feel free. Any messages to the fellow drivers or anybody else listening? Polar Bear, you've had a lot of these, so we're going to start with you and let Nathan think on it for a second, okay?
The only thing I use a truck stop now for is really to clean dishes. And, I do everything out of my truck, so we do everything at Love's. That's really all I got is Love's. My thing is what I tell people, just be aware of your surroundings, because sometimes we get to park 3 or 4 rows back. And my biggest fear is somebody's underneath that trailer, and all they got to do is just the simplest, a broom, a rod, and get you down.
Yeah,
especially if they know like you had just gotten a cash advance. But that's all I got.
So be safe out there. Keep your head on a swivel. Much like I know a lot of you truck drivers out there, a lot of you liquid drivers are ex-high school football players. And back when we all played, the what did they call it? The crackback block was legal. And so every coach would tell you, keep your head on a swivel. You got to look where you're going because somebody's going to hit you. Same type of thing here, Polar Bear. Keep that head on a swivel. Be aware of what's going on 360 degrees. Nathan, we'll go to you for your final thoughts here. Anything for us before we let you get back to it, my friend?
I would say give the local truck stops, the mom and pops, give them a chance. Because, everyone's like, the showers at the big box ones that, I have a trucker path, I invested a little bit for the thing to know where all the little mom and pops are. Give those a shot because you'd be pleasantly surprised giving them a try on your route.
Yeah, well, and I would think from a customer service standpoint, too, they're probably a lot more, it's a lot more important to them to have you there than it is for you to stop at one of these giant ones in a big city, right?
Yeah.
And they're going to take 100%. Care of you. Yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, Nathan Dobrenz, Polar Bear, I appreciate you guys as always. Thank you so much for coming on the Liquid Trucking Podcast to talk truck stops today. Be safe out there. Keep that shiny side up, all right? We'll talk to you guys soon.
All right, Marcus. I'm back. I muted you. I didn't realize that, so I'm back.
All right, well.
Yes, this has been great, Marcus. This is, like I said, I just being on here and talking with whoever I can or just you.
Well, it's always awesome, man.
Happy New Year, too.
Happy New Year to you guys as well. Thank you to you, Nathan, as well. And guys, you're always welcome. All you got to do is call. And if there's a great example for you, Polar Bear can give it. He just sent me a text yesterday and said, I want to come on. It was that simple. So it's real easy. Love to have all you guys on. Take care, Nathan and Polar Bear. We'll talk to you guys soon, okay?
All righty.
Great stuff there from Polar Bear and Nathan Dobrenz. Thank you kindly to both of those gentlemen for coming on for the conversation. Always good to have you drivers on. And again, I want to remind you, you want to come on this show and talk about whatever, all you got to do is send me an email or a text message or shoot me a call. The email address is podcast@liquidtrucking.com. As far as the phone number goes, talk to somebody who you've heard on the show if you don't have it, or get in touch with Jason, Bo Hankey, Cole Brown. Those guys have all got my number. They'll all happily give it to you. Let's talk some more best and worst truck stops around. So I have this list. I may have already referenced it, but it is a list of dangerous truck stops by state. And since we didn't get to talk about all of these, Obviously, we're not going to talk about all of them here in the last segment of the show. However, I am going to bring you some from my home state at the very least, and the Pacific Northwest here, because I happen to know where all of these are, and I happen to know that at least some of them are absolutely perfect where they're at here on the list. Let's start out in my home state of Oregon, born and raised Oregon boy here, and there's only 2 truck stops that you need to stay away from in Oregon. And let me tell you, been to both of them frequently. One of them has a Popeye's chicken, which is kind of cool, but that is where the list ends, okay? The other thing I will say about these 2, which are the TA in Troutdale, that's on exit 17, it's on Marine Drive, and the other one is the Loves on exit 17 in Troutdale on Marine Drive. They sit right next to each other. The one good thing about both of these, and I hope that you guys would agree with me if you've been to them, there is pretty substantial parking at both of these truck stops, as Marine Drive sits right on Interstate 84, and it only is on one side of the freeway, and so kind of everything that they're doing, there's like an outlet mall there's a couple truck stops, there's a McDonald's and a Wendy's and so on, and a Chevron. A lot of it is just kind of parking, okay? So I don't know how much truck parking. I haven't actually gone in there and asked how many parking spots they have, because honestly, it's quite terrifying to go anywhere but the Popeye's chicken at either one of these places. But from what I see, not only from looking down on it from the freeway, but just seeing it in being at these truck stops from time to time, you definitely have some parking there. I can't guarantee you it's where you really want to be, though. So definitely watch yourself again at the TA Troutdale number 5060. That's off I-84 exit 17. And again, right next to it, Love's number 449, I-84 exit 17, Troutdale, Oregon. Let's go to the great state of Washington. That's a joke. I don't like that state at all. I don't mind the state, the geography. It's beautiful. It's the Seattle Seahawks, honestly, and the Washington Huskies. If Seattle fell off into the ocean tomorrow, I would be very sad, because one of my best friends lives there. But I would get over it soon, and knowing that I would never have to hear from the Seattle Seahawks or the Washington Huskies fans again. Very similar to the state of Oregon here with dangerous truck stops in Washington. There's only 2. And it's looking like they're a little bit far apart. In fact, they're on opposite sides of the state. So if you get to one, hopefully you can just cruise by the other one, because you should be through the state of Washington in like 4 hours, I would say, tops, unless you got to go over Snoqualmie. I heard they got some real hairy stuff going on up there as of late. But anyway, let's stay focused. The most dangerous truck stops in Washington to stay away from, Love's number 448, sits off of I-5 exit 136 in Tacoma, Washington. Now, for those of you that don't frequent the Pacific Northwest, we do have a rule here, and it's called stay the hell out of Tacoma, Washington. It's Seattle's little brother, and oftentimes it seems like Seattle went, we like all the parts about Seattle except for the rampant intravenous drug use and the crime. So we're going to send that all south to Tacoma, which is also where we're going to put a really cool auto club museum and the Tacoma Dome, which, well, it's only going to house like AAA sports. You'll see some of the best concerts that come through Seattle land at the Tacoma Dome rather than up at Key Arena or wherever the hell the football team plays. Now, I don't know. They change that damn thing every couple of years, but just stay out of Tacoma. That's my advice. Born and raised in the Pacific Northwest, been to Tacoma more times than I can count. Stay out, okay? I once saw legendary punk band NoFX in Tacoma, and NoFX said Tacoma was the worst place they'd ever been. That's a skate punk band that formed in 1983 in Southern California. You might take their word for it. Or mine. That's all I'm saying. The other one is all the way over in eastern Washington in the Tri-Cities area. The Tri-Cities consists of Pasco, Richland, and Kennewick. And Pasco is where this other dangerous truck stop in the state of Washington is. The Flying J Broadway. It's number 970, and it is not actually off of a major freeway or exit. It's just on a road, 2216 East Hillsborough Road in Pasco, Washington. Again, the Flying J Broadway. You'll want to stay away from that. Pasco, in terms of how the Tri-Cities really kind of falls together, Pasco's the worst one, okay? You want to be in Kennewick. You probably want to stay out of Richland and Pasco if you can. However, They have some really cool hydroplane races that rip through Pasco from time to time during the summer. So if you are a fan, jump down on the Snake River and catch a load of some really cool hydroplane races. I have seen those a couple of times. But stay away from the Flying J in Pasco and the Loves on I-5 exit 136 in Tacoma. Finally, I'm going to give, actually I can't. I was going to tell you about dangerous truck stops in the state of Idaho because whether or not they agree with it, we've always kind of looked at Idaho as like that's the other state in the Pacific Northwest. It's Oregon, Washington, Idaho. It's us three tucked up here in the corner. But I'm very happy to tell you that Washington and Oregon both have their own truck stops that nobody wants you to go to, and they're pretty dangerous. Idaho doesn't have any. Everything in Idaho, according to, what is this, Interstate 101, which Interstate 101 is, they do all sorts of stuff with the trucking industry. I think they handle some recruiting. They've got fuel discounts available. It says Trucking 101 routes can be found in the idea that an educated driver or owner-operator is a better driver owner-operator. Great job for you. Trucking 101. However, they do list a insurance company here, I think, once or twice. So, listen, those are some bad ones. I would stay away from them. I know your load's not much in jeopardy. It could be, but it's probably one of the worries that falls down your list a little bit. I will say, based on my experience in all four of those areas, you should just be careful from a personal standpoint. Keep your head on a swivel and be looking around over your shoulder, because while a lot of the stuff that happens in those areas is property crime related, you never know. There's always a news story coming out of those areas about somebody who was accosted or attacked. So keep your head on a swivel. I went to the Reddit, or the subreddit r/truckers again, and while this post is a little bit old, it's about a year old. That's okay. I think it's still relevant. These guys are actually talking about, well, the post says best and worst truck stops, but a lot of them here that I have to read are about good truck stops, and I want to go ahead and throw some of those out for you right now. Trucker Bob says, Stone's Truck Stop in Watertown, South Dakota is the top of my list, followed by the Go-Mart in Lore City, Ohio. His worst ones are any pilot in the Northeast or any pilot along I-70 in Eastern Ohio. Interesting. Let's see. There's a TA in southern Minnesota called Happy Trails, Albert Lee, Minnesota on 35 South. That is according to Virgin Trucker 69. Nice name there. Nice name. How about this one? Due Requirement 4674 says personal favorite is Little America Truck Stop in Wyoming. He says it's the one in the middle of nowhere, not the one in Laramie. Iowa 80, of course, and Joplin 44 down in Joplin, Missouri is another one that makes his list. And there is a ton of love for Little America Truck Stop down in the responses to his post. So I got to imagine Little America probably gets up there. As we scroll down through, they say anything in West Memphis or Memphis in general inside of one of the major cities or Dallas, Fort Worth, and Houston, you should steer clear. TA in Loki, Ohio isn't bad, and the Petro in Loveland, Colorado isn't bad either. This guy, Dizzy Asparagus, says, I primarily run off the out of the southeast, mostly Florida, Georgia, and Alabama. So out of the areas I run, my favorite would be the Busy Bee off of I-10 in Live Oak, Florida. And the worst would be the pilot off of 285 in Atlanta. Now, I've heard stories about that pilot before. Stay away. How about this one? Trucker Biscuit says, the Abbeyland Travel Center in Curtis, Wisconsin has to be up there for me. Super clean, there's always parking, and a dope AYCE breakfast buffet on Sunday mornings. AYCE, of course, standing for all you can eat. You fellow foodies out there knew that in a heartbeat. Bosselman Travel Plaza in Grand Island, Nebraska is one of my favorite stops. The Pilot Town Pump in Billings, Montana is one of my local go-tos. I also like the Petro and TA in Wheeler Ridge, California, because all of the good food within walking distance. My worst has to be the TA in Oglala, Nebraska. That place is absolutely disgusting, and any truck stop in West Memphis is also one to stay away from. And then let's get to one more here because I like this. A little positivity coming out after we just told you some places to stay away from in the Pacific Northwest. Nobody Cares 127 says any of the coffee cups in South Dakota or North Dakota, they're technically TAs, but they franchise and are owned by a family company. Clean most of the time, good-sized lots, fuel prices are usually lower than surrounding places, and they have a decent selection of road food and fast food. The only issue I've ever had with them is their bathrooms don't have paper towels, which is obscenely obnoxious. I can see that as well. But one downfall from quite a few positive points there when we're talking about the coffee cups in South Dakota and North Dakota. All right, I think I could pretty much wrap it up there. I feel like we've given you guys a whole bunch of really good places where you can go and be safe and clean and happy, and we've given you some places where, well, maybe that doesn't happen, and maybe you got to stay away from them. By any means, I hope that you all are staying safe out there all the time and keeping your head on a swivel, because obviously the safety of our drivers getting home, and we're not only talking about safety on the road but off, is the most paramount important thing in our lives, and that's why we're doing this podcast. We don't want to have to come on here and talk about stories where you guys showed up at that Love's in Troutdale and somebody stole a tire off the trailer or something. I wouldn't put it past them, okay? Like I said, I've been there a lot. That kind of wraps this episode up. Thanks for talking best and worst truck stops with me today, Liquid. Special thanks to Nathan Dobrenz and Polar Bear for coming on the show earlier. And thanks also, last week's episode, I didn't bring this up earlier, but last week's episode was like almost 2 hours long. Big thanks to everybody that took part in that. I had a lot of New Year's resolutions to talk about. I'm telling you, I love it when you drivers participate in this podcast. So once again, shoot me an email, podcast@liquidtrucking.com. Or if you've got my phone number, look me up, man. We want to get you on this podcast as much and as often as you want to be on it. That's going to wrap up episode 59 of the Liquid Trucking Podcast. Thank you for being here with me. Of course, your host, Marcus. Don't forget to go to liquidtrucking.com and click on the banner at the top of the page to check out our all-in-one landing place for everything Liquid Trucking Podcast. That does it today. I'm out of here. Stay safe out there, drivers, and keep the shiny side up. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for tuning in and being the gold standard of drivers on the road. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel and tune in next week for another episode of the Liquid Trucking Podcast.